Hello everyone. Have you ever heard a strange sound at night? Or seen something small that felt way too wrong to ignore? In tonight's video, we dive into 3 creepy true stories. A man hears a sound that wasn't part of the movie. A student is stalked by an ice cream truck. And someone starts getting phone calls from their own voice. What would you do in their place? Drop a comment below if anything like this has ever happened to you. Because sometimes, the scariest stories It was a quiet, peaceful evening in Austin, Texas. Ethan, Olivia, and their little girl, Emma, had just finished preparing for a small family celebration. The house was filled with warmth, laughter, and the smell of home-cooked food. But the peace shattered in an instant when Ethan's phone rang. His expression immediately changed when he saw the caller ID. It was an old friend of his brother, David, who lived far away. The words that followed hit Ethan like a thunderstrike. "Have you seen David? He's gone missing." The next few minutes felt like hours. Ethan's voice shook as he tried calling different family members. No one had heard from David. A cold knot formed in Olivia's stomach as she watched her husband struggle to keep it together. Ethan quickly dialed the hospital, his heart racing with every passing second. And then, the truth hit them. David had been found. He was critically injured, unconscious, barely clinging to life. The tragedy was almost too much to bear. A birthday, a celebration that should have been joyful, turned into an unbearable nightmare. Olivia held Ethan as tears streamed down his face, knowing that this was more than just the loss of a brother, it was the loss of a piece of their own family. David passed away that very night, on his 18th birthday. As the house fell silent, the weight of his death hung over them. And that was only the beginning of something far darker that neither Ethan nor Olivia could have ever imagined. After the devastating news, Ethan and Olivia drove to his mother's house to be with her. The heavy silence in the air was almost suffocating, as everyone sat together mourning David's loss. Olivia could see the shock in Ethan's eyes, but even more unsettling was the eerie stillness in his mother's home. Mrs. Margaret sat motionless, staring blankly at the door as if waiting for David to walk through it at any moment. Needing a moment to breathe, Ethan and Olivia stepped outside. They sat in Ethan's car, the cool night air offering a brief reprieve from the heavy atmosphere inside. But just as they were settling in, something impossibly strange happened. The car's engine roared to life on its own. The radio blasted, and the very song David had always loved echoed through the speakers. Olivia froze, a cold shiver running down her spine. There was no explanation. No one had touched the keys. And then, something more terrifying happened. Olivia stared ahead, her breath caught in her throat. From the corner of her eye, she noticed something in the driver's seat. A figure, faint but unmistakable. It was a silhouette, sitting perfectly still, hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. Her heart skipped a beat as she recognized it. David. The same David who had died just hours before. A rush of fear flooded her senses, her skin prickling with cold dread. She blinked, hoping it was some kind of illusion, but when she looked back, the figure remained. Frozen in place, she reached for the door handle, desperate to understand what was happening, but the door wouldn't budge. It was locked. No matter how hard she tried, the door remained shut, as though some invisible force was keeping her away. She felt a terrifying pull in the pit of her stomach, but she couldn't tear her eyes away from the shadowy form in the seat. The music blared louder, as though the car itself was alive, haunted by something she couldn't comprehend. Could this truly be him, or was something else at play? Olivia, heart racing and breath shallow, bolted from the car. She ran to find Ethan, her voice shaking as she told him everything. "Ethan, it was him! It was David in the car!" But when they returned, there was nothing. The car sat empty, the engine off, the music gone. Everything had returned to normal, but the feeling in Olivia's chest, heavy and cold, remained. The terror that had gripped her was still raw, and her mind raced with unanswered questions. Could this have been David, reaching out from beyond, trying to offer comfort in a way he never could before? Or was it something else, something darker? Whatever it was, the event left them all shaken, with no way to explain what they had just witnessed. The drive home was silent, heavy with the weight of the night's events. Olivia and Ethan sat side by side, their minds racing but too exhausted to speak. Neither of them could explain what had happened, but Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that something supernatural had occurred. Perhaps, just perhaps, it was David's way of letting them know he was still there, watching over them, offering a final moment of comfort that he never had the chance to give before. As they pulled into their driveway, Olivia whispered, maybe it was him, just trying to say goodbye, but the uncertainty lingered. Was it really him? She thought, feeling a strange mix of grief and relief. Has anyone ever experienced something like this? Something that makes you question the boundaries between life and death? She left the question hanging in the air, hoping someone would share their own chilling experiences. It was a humid summer evening in Los Angeles, and Samantha felt a strange pull inside her, a mix of excitement and dread. She had always been sensitive to the unknown, feeling the presence of things unseen, but she had never dared to confront them head-on. That was until she met Tom. Tom had just moved into the building, a charming yet mysterious man who seemed to know more about the supernatural than anyone she'd ever met. His talk about tarot cards, psychics, and the afterlife intrigued Samantha, though it unsettled her at the same time. But Tom was persuasive. He claimed he could read the future. He said everyone had the potential to see what was coming, they just had to tap into it. "Come on, Sam," he urged one evening. "You should try it. I promise it'll change your life." Reluctantly, she agreed. Tom handed her an old, worn-out tarot deck, its edges frayed with age. Something about it felt wrong, but she brushed it off. It was just a game, right? That night, alone in her apartment, Samantha spread the cards on the floor, her heart pounding. Her fingers trembled as she shuffled them. As she placed the first card, an icy chill filled the room. The temperature dropped. A whisper of a voicino, a murmur brushed past her ear. It was the sound of someone watching. Someone not quite human. After that first tarot reading, Samantha's nights were filled with strange, disturbing dreams. Each night, her mind drifted into dark, vivid visions of death, visions so real she could feel the cold air, hear the screams, and see the horror unfold in front of her. In one dream, she saw her mother lying motionless, her body cold and lifeless, surrounded by an eerie silence. In another, her brother was dragged into the darkness, his terrified voice echoing in her ears as he vanished from sight. But the most unsettling was the repeated appearance of the card, the Fool. Each time Samantha drew it, an overwhelming sense of dread consumed her. The card seemed to mock her, its dark energies lingering long after she'd put it down. Every time she looked at it, her chest tightened with fear, and something deep inside her screamed that something was wrong. But she couldn't stop. She kept drawing, kept reading. The more she dabbled in the tarot, the stranger and darker things became. Doors creaked open in the dead of night. Shadows moved in the corners of her eyes. It was as if the cards weren't just telling her the future, they were bringing it to life, one terrifying moment at a time. One evening, Samantha found herself compelled to draw from the tarot deck again. As her hands shuffled the cards, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. For the third time, she pulled the card, the Fool. The instant it hit the table, a chilling draft filled the room. Then she saw it, a shadow, faint and ethereal, standing in the far corner. It lingered for only a second, but that second was enough to make her heart race. The temperature in the room dropped sharply, and a coldness filled the air, making her skin crawl. From that moment on, the energy in her apartment shifted. Every night, she would hear strange footsteps, slow and deliberate, echoing through the empty house. Her reflection in the mirror seemed to warp, with dark figures moving just out of sight. The more Samantha read, the stronger the presence became, always watching, always waiting. Something had been awakened, and it was coming for her. As the days passed, Samantha couldn't escape the overwhelming feeling that something terrible was coming. The eerie predictions from her tarot readings began to manifest one by one. First, her aunt, someone she had grown close to, was diagnosed with a sudden illness and passed away just days later. Then, her cousin's life was torn apart by an unexpected tragedy. Each event felt like a cruel confirmation of the card's power, and the weight of it crushed her spirit. The dreams grew more vivid, more specific, showing her other horrors yet to come. Samantha realized that tarot was no longer just a game. It was a dark window into something beyond her control. As the events continued to unfold, she was faced with a terrifying choice. Stop reading the cards, or keep delving deeper into a world of shadows, knowing that the cost might be too high. Could she turn back before it was too? Samantha sat in her dimly lit apartment, the tarot cards scattered in front of her. Her mind raced, haunted by the events that had come to life from the cards. She couldn't shake the feeling that the path she had chosen was irreversible. Was she truly seeing the future, or was something darker manipulating her every move? Have any of you ever experienced something strange that you couldn't explain? She thought aloud. Maybe you've drawn a card at the wrong moment, and what you saw became real. She stared at the cards, her hands trembling. Could she ever return to her normal life, or was she forever bound to the unknown? She hoped someone, anyone, could share their own story, maybe together. They could make sense of it all. As John read through the pages of the old journal, a creeping sense of dread settled over him. The more he read, the heavier the atmosphere became. Late that night, he was startled by faint footsteps, echoing through the empty house. He froze, but no one was there. The silence returned, thick and suffocating. Then, as if something invisible was watching, the window in the living room slowly creaked open, despite there being no wind. His heart raced. That evening, the lights flickered, casting erratic shadows on the walls, growing darker with each passing second. It felt as though the house itself was alive, its pulse quickening, closing in around him. Determined to understand what was happening, John dug deeper into the house's history. What he discovered sent a chill down his spine. In the 1920s, a horrific murder took place here. 3 members of a family butchered in their own home. Locals swore the spirits of the victims still lingered, trapped in the house, seeking justice. Now, John was certain. The house was never empty. That night, as John sat in the living room, trying to steady his racing heart, he heard Ida's soft knock on the door, followed by his name being called out in a faint, distant voice. His pulse quickened. He hesitated, then opened the door, only to find nothing but an unnatural silence. A cold gust of wind rushed in, chilling him to the bone. But as he turned back to the room, he froze. In the mirror across from him, a shadowy figure materialized, its form shifting and wavering. His breath caught in his throat as the figure seemed to stare right into his soul. After that, everything went downhill. Sleep evaded him, and every corner of the house seemed to whisper his name. Invisible hands brushed against his shoulder, and faint whispers haunted him day and night. Terrified, John knew it was time to face the spirits that lingered in the house, to free Theme or face the consequences of their wrath. John could no longer deny the truth. The spirits haunting Cedar Lake were not malevolent demons, but the tormented souls of those who had died unjustly. Their pain, their suffering, was so deep, it had bound them to the house, preventing them from finding peace. They didn't want revenge, they wanted release. But how could he help them find peace when his own soul was teetering on the edge of fear? Determined to end the nightmare, John researched rituals to free the lost spirits. In the dead of night, he set up a makeshift altar in the living room, surrounded by candles, and began to chant the words that might save them all. As the air grew thick and the room grew colder, John felt something stir behind him, a presence, darker, more powerful than before. He had only one chance. Would the ritual work, or would he too be bound to this cursed place forever? John's mind raced as the ritual reached its peak. The room felt suffocating, the air thick with an oppressive presence. He could feel the weight of the spirits lost, desperate, but still lingering, bound to the place. The candle flames flickered violently, casting wild shadows across the walls. Was this the moment of their release, or was he only inviting something darker? As the last words escaped his lips, a cold silence filled the room. Nothing. Was it over? Had he succeeded? John stared into the emptiness, his heart pounding. The house seemed to watch him, the quiet now unnerving. He had faced the unknown, but did it end here? Or was this only the beginning of something worse? Have you ever felt haunted by a place, a presence you couldn't explain? John wondered. Do spirits, those lost between life and death, truly walk among us? He didn't know, but one thing was certain: the question would stay with him forever. Megan had barely settled into her new home in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, when she began to feel something wasn't right. The first few nights were filled with the usual settling noises of an old house. But then, strange things started happening. Late one night, as she lay in bed, she heard faint footsteps echoing down the dark hallway. At first, she brushed it off, attributing it to her tiredness or imagination. But the next night, it happened again. Soft, deliberate steps that seemed to be walking closer to her door, then stopping, only to resume moments later. A cold shiver ran down her spine. She couldn't explain it. The nights grew worse. Every time Megan glanced into the mirrors around the house, she felt an unsettling sensation, like someone was standing behind her. Yet, when she turned, there was nothing. The feeling of being watched gnawed at her, growing stronger each day. Then, one night, she saw it. A shadow, faint but unmistakable, slid past the window outside. It wasn't a trick of the light, it was too distinct. Her heart pounded in her chest as she rushed to the door, flinging it open. But there was nothing there, just the eerie stillness of the darkened yard. The only thing left was the bone-chilling cold that seeped into her bones, leaving her with a haunting question: what was watching her? As the nights dragged on, Megan's unease deepened. The footsteps grew louder, more distinct, as if someone was walking just outside her bedroom door. She would lie awake, heart pounding, listening to the soft, steady breathing in the hallway. But whenever she checked, no one was there. The house, once charming, now felt suffocating. One evening, after a long day, Megan glanced into the hallway mirror, and there it was, a shadow of figure, tall and dark, standing just behind her reflection. Her breath caught in her throat, and her pulse hammered in her ears. She spun around, but the hallway was empty. That night, as she lay in bed, she saw something else. A faint figure moved past the window, its shape barely visible in the dark, but enough to freeze her blood. When she opened the door, the cold hit her like a wave. Nothing. Just the void of the night watching her back. Something was there. Something she couldn't escape. Megan had barely settled into her new home in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, when she began to feel something wasn't right. The first few nights were filled with the usual settling noises of an old house. But then, strange things started happening. Late one night, as she lay in bed, she heard faint footsteps echoing down the dark hallway. At first, she brushed it off, attributing it to her tiredness or imagination. But the next night, it happened again. Soft, deliberate steps that seemed to be walking closer to her door, then stopping, only to resume moments later. A cold shiver ran down her spine. She couldn't explain it. The nights grew worse. Every time Megan glanced into the mirrors around the house, she felt an unsettling sensation, like someone was standing behind her. Yet, when she turned, there was nothing. The feeling of being watched gnawed at her, growing stronger each day. Then, one night, she saw it. A shadow, faint but unmistakable, slid past the window outside. It wasn't a trick of the light, it was too distinct. Her heart pounded in her chest as she rushed to the door, flinging it open, but there was nothing there. Just the eerie stillness of a darkened yard. The only thing left was the bone-chilling cold that seeped into her bones, leaving her with a haunting question. What was watching her? Driven by a mix of dread and curiosity, Megan decided to search the house's history, hoping to find answers to the strange occurrences. In the dark, musty basement, she stumbled upon old boxes filled with yellowed papers and dusty books. Among them, she found a journal, its leather cover cracked and worn. As she flipped through the pages, her heart raced. The journal belonged to the house's previous occupants. It spoke of a woman named Clara Green, who had lived there in the 1920s. The entries grew darker, recounting Clara's eerie disappearance. One night, she simply vanished, leaving no trace behind. Whispers in the town claimed Clara's spirit never left the house, forever trapped, unable to rest. Megan's breath caught in her throat. She now knew the source of the strange feelings in the house. Clara's presence lingered, and Megan feared it was more than just a haunted, it was a warning. Could Clara's restless soul be the force behind the growing terror in her new home? It was another sleepless night when Megan saw it. In the reflection of the bathroom mirror, a faint figure began to materialize. The shape of a woman, translucent and shifting, stood silently behind her. Megan's heart pounded in her chest as she spun around, but there was no one there. She turned back to the mirror. The figure was still there, staring at her with hollow, unblinking eyes. "Clara?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The figure flickered for a moment before it slowly faded away, like smoke dissolving into the air. The room fell silent again, but the terror in Megan's heart only intensified. This wasn't just a ghost, this was Clara Green, the woman whose restless spirit had been tormenting the house for decades. Fear gripped her, but Megan knew she couldn't run from this. She had to face it. Desperation took hold as she researched everything she could about spiritual rituals, hoping to find a way to help Clara move on. She couldn't just sit back and let the terror consume her. She had to perform a ritual, but deep down, she feared what might happen if it failed. Would Clara ever be at peace, or would she drag Megan into the darkness with her? Megan stood in the center of the room, trembling as the ritual reached its peak. Candles flickered, casting twisted shadows across the walls. The air grew suffocatingly heavy, as though the house itself was holding its breath. She recited the final words, her voice barely a whisper. Silence fell. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the temperature in the room plummeted, and Megan's breath became visible, the cold biting through her clothes. The air around her seemed to swirl, and the unmistakable presence of Clara lingered in the darkness. Suddenly, the mirror in front of her cracked, a deep, resonant sound that echoed through the house. Megan's heart raced as she stared at the fractured reflection of herself. Was it over? Had Clara found peace? Or was something darker about to consume her? Megan's heart skipped a beat as she felt a hand brush her shoulder. She spun around, but there was no one there. The house was silent again, but the oppressive feeling remained. Was it really over? Or had she just unleashed something far worse? Have you ever lived in a house where you felt watched, like something was always lingering nearby? Do restless spirits truly exist around us? If they do, would you dare face them? It was a quiet evening in Raleigh, and Olivia had just settled into her new apartment after another exhausting day. The soft hum of the city outside her window made her feel at peace, but that peace was suddenly shattered by a loud knock on the door. Her heart skipped a beat. Who could it be this late? When she opened the door, she was face to face with a man she had never seen before. He stood there with a warm smile, but something in his eyes made her uneasy. He introduced himself as Ethan Walker, a new neighbor who had just moved in down the hall. He explained that there was an issue with the electricity in his apartment, and that he needed a tool to fix it. Olivia hesitated for a moment, but his charm seemed harmless, and he looked genuinely friendly. Something in her gut told her to be cautious, but she brushed it aside. After all, it was just a neighbor. She invited him in. They chatted for a few minutes, and Ethan's ease and wit quickly put her at ease. His smile was warm, his words smooth, and Olivia felt herself relaxing in his presence. But then, to her surprise, he casually invited her for coffee. Just to get to know each other better, he said. Something about the invitation felt off. Still, Olivia agreed, eager to be friendly. But deep down, a voice whispered, what was he really after? After that first meeting, Olivia began to feel an unsettling presence around Ethan. At first, she chalked it up to her imagination, but as the days went by, the oddities only intensified. She couldn't shake the feeling that he was always watching her, even when he wasn't around. Every glance in her direction seemed charged with an intensity that left her uncomfortable, but she couldn't pinpoint why. It wasn't just his gaze that unnerved her. That night, as she lay in bed trying to sleep, she heard footsteps low, deliberate going through her apartment, but when she checked, there was no one there. The silence that followed was worse than the sound itself. The unease spread like a dark cloud, suffocating her. She noticed it more and more when she made phone calls. A strange buzzing sound lingered in the background, and sometimes she swore she could hear faint breathing. It was as if someone, somewhere, was listening. Her heart raced each time she thought of Ethan. He was no longer just a friendly neighbor. His actions, his words, they were starting to feel like something darker was lurking beneath. What was he really after? And why was she feeling so trapped? Olivia's unease about Ethan had been growing for days, but now, it had reached a breaking point. Determined to find out more about the man who seemed to be invading every aspect of her life, she began digging. She searched online, but there was nothing, no social media profiles, no background information. It was as if Ethan Walker didn't exist, or had been erased completely. The emptiness in the search results sent a chill crawling up her spine. Frustrated and frightened, Olivia started rifling through old papers in her apartment, hoping for some answers. That's when she found Ida Weathered, old journal buried in the back of a drawer. The pages were yellowed and fragile, but the name written on the cover stopped her cold. Ethan Walker. The entries described a man, but not the man she knew. The journal recounted strange events, mysterious disappearances, an unsolved crime solved pointing to Ethan's involvement in something far darker than she could have ever imagined. The truth was more terrifying than she could have anticipated. Olivia could no longer ignore the truth. The unsettling discoveries in the journal were too much to dismiss. She had to confront Ethan. Her heart pounded in her chest as she stood in front of him, her eyes searching his face for any sign of guilt. He greeted her with his usual warm smile, but this time, she could see at the flicker of something darker behind his eyes. "Ethan," she said, her voice trembling. "Who are you really?" His expression faltered, just for a second, but it was enough to send a jolt of fear through her. He wasn't the charming neighbor she had believed him to be. He was hiding something dangerous. The lies, the disappearances, the crimes, they were all connected to him. The air in the room grew thick with tension. Olivia's instincts screamed at her to run, but she knew she couldn't. Not anymore. The past was coming for her, and she had to face it. Is Ethan a dangerous man, or just someone trapped by a dark past? She wondered. She had to escape, but could she? And there you have it. 3 moments, 3 warnings, 3 chances to trust your instincts before it's too late. Have you ever gone through something strange like that? A phone call, a noise, a stranger who didn't quite feel right. Share your story in the comments. I'd love to read it and maybe feature it in a future episode. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss a new story. Until next time, stay safe.